Welcome to Synced on Air. I'm your host, Angelique Robb, and today I have two designers with me. Very excited to have this discussion about differentiating your projects and what these colleagues have to say. So, Abby, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. Um, my name's Abby Rupsa. I am the principal designer and owner of Botanical Living in Broomfield, Colorado. And we are a design only boutique firm. We specialize in mostly residential properties, although we do help HOAs with xeric retrofits and beautifying their common spaces. We're not really commercial designers. We really like that personal communication with our residential clients. We do about 50 to 60 designs a year, and we have affiliate contractors who we work with to install our work.
Fantastic. Jesse, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey there. So I am Jesse, and I'm the founder of Daydream Design and Build here in Metro Atlanta, North Georgia area. We have worked in Atlanta for the past really 5 years, just kind of started about a decade ago in landscape maintenance. A lot of people in this industry kind of have a similar story. You go from picking up a mower to somehow designing a pool. That's a whole nother long story, but that's a quick background of me. I started in maintenance, kind of got a lot of details from gardening work, pesticide control in these turf and plant beds. And then that led into signing up for some design courses. And before I know it, I just have jumped down the rabbit hole of figuring things out like permits, requirements, 3D renderings, visualizations, and learning about the awesome opportunities in the residential market and the outdoor living. So that's where I got my start. Was slow but surely, and I'm excited to share things that I've learned and learn things from awesome people like Abby and contribute to the Sync Live community.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Again, we're talking about how to differentiate your designs. There's so much that goes into design. It's hard to actually illustrate it without more of a discussion. So design is something that I'm passionate about too, and also helping clients and other parts of the industry understand how different design is from the other parts, maybe, constructing and we have a good mix of experience here today. So maybe what we could start with is just walking people through when you arrive on a site and how you go about things, because again, it's different from arriving on a site with plans already. You build that blueprint from scratch. So Abby, do you want to kick us off with you
Sure.
know what makes it unique
Yeah,
when you get on
absolutely.
site?
So there are a lot of people who will do a lot of questioning before they arrive on site to kind of get the gist of what the project is all about. And I do ask some of those questions to pre-qualify and whatnot, but I find that it's really better to get the knee-jerk response from the customer in the space. A lot of times they'll invite me in the house and I just want to go out directly to the yard. And the first thing I'm looking at is, what kind of condition is their yard in, first of all. I realize
Like
that,
from a
it's never,
care.
yeah, it's never going to be, pristine. Obviously, that's why we have a job. But, what kind of condition is their yard in? And what kind of information can I glean from the customer about how they are going to interact with their space outside? A lot of times, they have no idea how to take care of a landscape. And so how much hand holding are they going to need after something that I put in, once it goes in, how much hand holding are they going to need, et cetera. But first and foremost, I think for me is what I'm kind of gathering is what is the architecture telling me? Is it a certain particular style of home, a period, historical home, or is it something that's just suburban and straightforward? The other thing I'm looking at is scale. Where is this house sitting on the lot? Is it a very deep front yard? Is it a very shallow front yard? Is it extremely vertical face of this house? Does there need to be any sort of hardscape element that is highlighted? These are things that are super important and they're just little mental notes. But I find that when I show up on site, usually my brain already starts working on how I want to see the space. And then I'll let them kind of go into how they use the space, who is using it with them, what kind of parameters we need to follow.
I actually touched on something that I didn't even have as part of the questions, but you pre-qualify your clients before getting on site. That's a great topic. And, it happens before you get on site, like you said. So how important is that? Abby, you've said it, you do this and it's important to you. Let's get Jesse involved in the conversation. Like how important is it to you, Jesse? And is there something that you do ahead of time to pre-qualify clients?
Yeah, it's a mouthful, but I'll summarize it as best as I can. So I learned from a guy, a lot of my history, or in pools anyways, I started working for a guy who had a stack of papers that reached his ceiling, literally folders. And I said, "What are those?" He said, "Oh, those are just the free consultations I got that never turned into jobs." Well, I didn't really realize it back
No.
then, but I was just like, man, if every one of them, say he would have just charged $500, I don't know, just charge something, whatever, that's a lot of money sitting there. Anyways, as I got
Wasted
longer
effort.
into this, back to pre-qualifying, before I even get out to a site, and this is free game, so anyone listening to this, use it, utilize it, remix it, whatever. I like to do obviously get a form of some sort and schedule a 15 to 20-minute call. But before I ever get on that call, I'm looking up tax assessor details, who owns the property. I'm looking up Zillow at current home values. So that's a good way to, you take that home value, and most clients are going to spend somewhere between 50 and 30% of the home value. So you already go ahead and start getting some, and that's not always true, but you go ahead and get some data. So when you get on these 15, 30-minute calls to pre-qualify, you already know. You ask questions like, do you have a survey? If they say no, that's okay. Well, can you get an updated one? They're like, I don't want to get a survey. That's a red flag. If you do things like talk about permitting and they say things like, forget permits, just come over and bring your tools, red flag. Then you get, and not everyone is going to be a red flag, and you can work around those sometimes, but and to not get long-winded and to, continue the conversation, pre-qualifying's huge. You can do it with just a little bit of research on Google. You can do it with simple questions. You can hear a lot in the way they talk to you, if they value you. I explain up front, no free nothing, no free this, it included in build cost, free, pull it out of build cost, no free site visit, free quote. It's just that word can get a little dangerous in what me and Abby are doing, and that's what that pre-qualifying call does. So, and I'll give the mic back over, but you go from the pre-qualifying call to scheduling a site visit after that.
Yeah, I always say that I don't like to sit at tables where you have to justify your value. Obviously you have to portray what your value is. And I think being in the space and really offering solutions and kind of spitballing ideas, I unlike you, Jesse, I don't charge a site visit. I found during COVID, I tried to do that, and it's interesting. You would think that, charging 150 or $200 or whatever to come out and take a look at the space would be a good way to weed out who is serious and who is not. But I will tell you that I would rather sort of optically build it into my price, because once you can start giving ideas and the customer starts to buy in, I find that I'm able to convert kind of ideas and wishful thinking from a homeowner into an actual sale of a design. Whereas if I were to say, hey, it's 150 or $200 for me to come out, they're usually quick to turn me down, which I know most people would say, well, then they're not your client. But truth is I feel like I could convert those to sales if you just get and spend time with me, get with me and spend time with me.
And I
Yeah. And
believe
so
that's,
maybe,
oh, you good.
you're
You good.
pre-qualifying in another way, with the questions. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that's the beautiful thing about dancing. You're going to dance with your customers different from the way I dance, right? It's
Absolutely.
just a dance. It's a long it's a long relationship, a long way, but it's a dance. And so either way you look at it, I feel like we're all gonna, you know, we're just all gonna be different in our own way. And that's, totally, I understand. Like I heard someone say, I'd rather have a fast nickel than a slow dime. I'm with you sometimes, so, but I just really think that my 15 or 30-minute virtual chat is just as valuable sometimes, because I can almost pull up the entire site right there with them and see real quick if the type of human they are. So
For sure.
totally see
For
where
sure.
you're coming from, though.
Yeah, for sure. I think you have to have a really good knack at reading people quickly in order to be successful and protect yourself.
Well, and I think that's the key. We don't all have to be doing things the same way, but we do have to value our own time, and we have to make it a valued profession. And these discussions will do that, will help others that are maybe have been told that I won't pay for your designs. And we want to give people that strength to say, you are delivering great work. You should be charging for your designs. And you just have to find your way to find your people, find your dance partner. Love
Yeah,
that,
and
Jesse.
a good
So go ahead.
no, I was going to say a good thing also is I think the word site visit gets confused on what I actually do. I mean, I have $10,000, $12,000 worth of site tools that we go out with, RTK devices. We go out and get LiDAR mapping. We do photogrammetry. I mean, a site visit, most people are just stopping by with their phone, grabbing pictures, talking to the client. I'll be at a site sometimes for 5 or 6 hours. So I don't have to go back, right? I can go and get my data,
That needs to
and that
be
gets
paid
real
for. Yeah.
confusing where it's like, yeah, you can go do free site visits, but you don't even have an altimeter in your truck. You're not even checking elevations. You're not running $4,000 drone. Like there's just such a level that, because I'm such a nerd about design and the future of it and where it's going with the tools that are coming out with AI and just what a photo cloud map can do. And I want to pull that kind of stuff up later for us and see it in this meeting and show people who's watching this that, like, hey, there's a difference between a site visit, stop by, talk about the goals versus like, did you leave with data? So that's where I can't go to a site for free with, you know, 15, 20 grand worth of equipment and spend all day for them to just be like, oh, you know what? We only wanted to spend $5,000 on a pool project. It's just like none of that makes
On a pool.
On the
you
design or on the actual pool?
Yeah, no, on the
the
actual
whole
pool. No.
on the pool. Yeah, on the pool. And he laughing, but it's happened to me. I've had people ask me to move TVs. By the time I left, they said, "Hey, I got a big old TV back there. You got a truck? Can you take it to the dump for $200?" And I was like, I just came on a quote for. I was like, okay, whatever. But anyways, that's just I had to put that out there because I feel like the word site visit. It's like, what is a site visit, right? So
Well, it means different things to different people. Everybody has their own process. I think that's, yeah, but that's what makes us unique, but it's also makes us unique on how we differentiate the service that we provide through the design. And so s- going going into that, are there things that, I mean, surely you've seen other projects, you've seen the way other people do things. Like how do you differentiate what you offer? Jesse, I mean, I think the site visit, that was an interesting one for you to say what differentiates you from a site visit point of view. Abby, from a design, do you want to start on what differentiates your work, your projects, or
I
your type of
think,
client?
yeah, well, I mean, I don't do any advertising at all. Everything comes from word of mouth from past clients or contractors with whom I work or interior designers or realtors. So a lot of times when I do have a client, they're already somewhat vetted, which is really nice. I would say that one of the things that I try to do as a designer is to, more from my own sanity perspective, is to create a very different experience every time I'm designing. So, you know, I live in a very suburban area. It's all very cookie cutter. And, you might get something that's a traditional house versus something that's more craftsman, but that's about the extent of it as
Okay.
far as, but then like down in Denver, you get a very wide range of things from mid-century modern to mission style to, like I said, craftsman, so there's all these different things that get me really excited. But I will say that I try to keep things very unique when I'm designing. I would say the only place that I ever really repeat or try to, that I do end up repeating is in our plant palette because it's so narrow. And so, sorry, there's a lawnmower crew outside. So hopefully you can't hear that. But
I can.
anyway, okay, good. So anyway, but I would say that if you look at my website, my projects are very different. And that's one of the things that I've been hearing recurring from my clients is that they value the fact that their yard doesn't look like their next door neighbor. There is a certain distinct style that I kind of have. I never try to over design for people, but you know, in my neighborhood in particular, I've done about, I want to say 60 houses roughly.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, we have a 430 house neighborhood and at any given time, I've got projects going on and you can kind of start to sort of tell my style, but I
Okay.
will say that everything feels very different. So that's kind of how I try to approach it with my client. I will tell them that I'm going to treat it like it's my own space and I'll listen to them about what their budget might be and what their, you know, requests are, but I'm really going to give them what their space needs and
Hmm.
what the potential is I think they can get to. And, sometimes that's high ticket, high dollar, and sometimes that's a little bit more under the radar, and I'm okay with that. I don't like to say that I'm a designer for wealthy people or for people with, this neighborhood or this zip code. Like, obviously, we've gotten to a level where we are handling more complex clients, but I get super jazzed about somebody who is really excited about a project and they might not have oodles of money. So, yeah,
Well, sometimes it gets you more creative when you have to
the
achieve a
constraint.
similar feel with less, half the budget that you normally have.
Absolutely. Yep. So, and
Have you
I'm very much about creating an experience for my client. Like it's not just about landscape design. It is somebody who's going to be investing, tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars in their yard. And ultimately, our industry can get a bad rep with, the bad apples. But I want them to walk away going, wow, that was actually really pleasant. And it
the
wasn't as
experience,
difficult
you
as I
mean?
thought.
The
Yes.
the
Yes.
design experience,
Yep.
the
All the way to
install.
build.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, that is interesting that you're saying 40 houses in a neighborhood and they're all unique. I mean, that's a lot. I had one job previously in Scotland that we did this really unique design, and then every client after that was like, "I want this," the same thing we'd
Yeah.
built, and I was like, "I don't want to do that in everybody's
Yeah.
yard."
Yeah. I do have a yard in the neighborhood that's very prominent. It sits at like the intersection of a couple streets and I will invariably get people saying they don't know it's my design necessarily, but they'll be like, "You know that house over on Madison?" And yes, I do. And we love that. We love that. And I'm like, well, that's one of our projects. So, and it'll have the ether of it, but it's never going to be exactly the same. I really try to, with the exception of one particular plant I use everywhere, which is Roseanne geranium. That's my signature. It seems to be in every design. But outside of that, I try to make things look pretty unique.
Awesome. Jesse, how do you create something unique in your way, in your designs?
We'll start off with, I think, Abby's page. Everyone if you're listening to this, go check her out on it's botanical.living. So I went and checked you
No,
out.
my Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah, Instagram. Yeah,
Got
so
it. Got it.
the page, you feel what you're talking about. So you really do a good job at. That's
Oh,
something
I
I'm
appreciate that.
still dealing with. Is like, you got this internet presence, but when you go to your page, like everything you were saying, you really feel it. You see it. You're on there. You're not trying to be who you're not, right? I really was like, whoa, like I like I like what you got going on. So for me, I was just thinking about this and I came up with something funny. It's like I think I'm still learning cursive right now when it comes to my signature. I'm real young. So I'm
Yeah.
like,
Hey, that's okay too. Yeah.
I'm I think my signature right now is more being an active listener when these people are talking, really note taking, super transparent. Sometimes it comes off a little rough. I'm just like, hey, like, I try to keep it as plain as possible because some of these people are making like lifetime investments. And, you know, I'm just blessed to be a part of it. And I want to make sure that, I can pick up the phone, like you text me, Angelique, it's probably what, 5 seconds. I'll get back to you or whoever. Like I'm very hands on and that's my signature right now. It's, obviously you get on the internet and you watch all these business gurus and like the owner has to be 500 miles away and cannot be in it. And you have to delegate and all this stuff. And of course, that's the goals of every business owner to be delegating everything and just it being amazing, but that's just not my signature right now. My signature's just who I am. So that's kind
I
of
think
where
that's
we're at
super
right now.
important. I think, being the face of a company, you have to put your money where your mouth is. You have to be accessible to the customer. Otherwise, that's the first point of erosion in trust. So one of the things that I'm starting to get frustrated by is the fact that, uh, private equity firms are gobbling up some of these companies here in Denver, and the whole company culture is starting to change. And it's all becoming about the margin and the bottom line and what did you sell this week and what are your numbers? And it's less about the customer. And I think that's where you, Jesse, are, you're understanding that that is a huge value for your customer, because that is what separates you from the company that does this. They point to, oh, well, it should have been his job or it was supposed to be her job. But if you take accountability for it and your customer knows that and they can get to you, they're going to, even if it's a bad situation that you're mitigating, it'll always come out on the other end better. And then they tell their friends about it or their colleagues, and then boom, you have another client. So
Exactly. I mean, weather, for example. I mean, there are certain things that we always have to battle with. Construction starts, and I'm sure Abby, you're involved in, even though you're a design only firm, if the construction doesn't go very well, you get tied into that somehow. And
yeah, for sure.
we have all of these issues that can happen because we're so exposed to the weather. And it's how you handle it. It's are you open? Are you answering the phone? Are you in the loop? Are you communicating well? And I think that today's clients need handholding. Because they don't understand. Jesse, you pointed out they want for $5,000, they want a whole pool built. Like we don't do a good job in our industry of being open with our costs and on the whole, and communication costs and, you know, maybe even the forward plan. I think there's a lot of room for communication in our industry to build that trust because we have bad actors occasionally, a low bar to
Sorry.
enter sometimes. Oh, I don't hear
there's
anything.
there's a blower outside.
No,
You're good.
I'm like,
I can't
I'm
hear
like,
nothing.
oh gosh. Okay, good.
we don't
They're
hear
about
it.
gone.
We don't hear
They're
it.
doing their job. So I'm like super grateful, but it's the worst timing. Sorry.
That's okay. No, don't worry. I know these headphones are all doing the trick, so that's
Thank
good.
goodness.
That's one thing that drew me to
A
Synced
question for you
was
guys.
you're good. No, I was just saying that's one thing that drew me to Synced was how
No, go ahead.
when you go to Angelique's event just last year in Atlanta and the show they put on was amazing and you just think how much even Angelique is doing to make you feel like Synced can be as big as you want it to feel, but also when it comes down to it, when you talk to Angelique, you're almost like, oh, I'm talking to a. It's a very important aspect that I told Angelica a while back, I was like, how important that human element is, and no matter what AI, comes out, that I really think that humans are pretty
Hate
advanced
AI.
as well. Yeah. So, but yeah,
Well, I also think AI can be a tool to let you have more human connection. Like sometimes we're overloaded with doing stuff that is kind of it needs to be done. Like let's say documenting everything you talked about on site. It still needs to be done, but now you could have it typing it out, transcribing it while you're meeting with the client. I mean, that's saving you hours when you get, usually meetings are after work. You can't always get it done during your daytime hours as to be done because of the client in the evening or weekend. Using these tools can mean that you can savor those times with your, the connections that you're making in person. This is why I love, doing these live calls. I want to do them more and more because I miss connection as a, you know, building the media company that we're doing with Synced is, it can be lonely. Well, I want to be
Very
out
much
here
so.
connecting with people. And Jesse, we met in person, but I'd never met Abby. But I feel like I know you, Abby, because we, I see your posts on LinkedIn. We've chatted on LinkedIn. You start to get to know people in a different way and you feel like you know them. And we hadn't met yet. My goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a pretty cool thing being connected via social media. I mean, COVID, everybody, in the home industry wasn't sure what was happening. And then we all got pushed online.
Yeah.
And I made some amazing connections of designers all across the country. And we are now, in a ladies group of designers. And, it started out sort of as a business group. And it was amazing just to hear how people would do their jobs almost the same. You talked about it being super isolating, especially in design only,
Hmm.
which is why I love being on site when the project is going in. So creating these little friendships where you can, whether that be online or with your contractors team, whatever it is, and obviously, like I said earlier, like my goal is to turn my clients into my friends. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, one thing comes to mind, and it's funny because Marty Dover and I are going live in a couple weeks, and it's kind of along the same line. But have you had clients that you show up on site, or are you talking to on the phone, Jesse, or however, that go, this is what I want, and you have to actually tell them no, or obviously maybe not as bluntly as that, but they're maybe convinced of things that are a really bad idea. And how would you tackle that? Either of you want to volunteer for that?
yeah,
Who wants to go first?
well, yeah, yeah. I think I
Okay,
said it
Jesse.
before Abby. The power of yes and no. I work mainly with contractors and I do work with homeowners, but like here in Atlanta, we have river corridors. We're in a really dense population, so lots of impervious calculation issues. I mean, there's so many things that while we have these goals that, oh, we're 15 foot away from a riverbank, you can't put the pool here, or you have to go through a very extensive long process, or just and it's not always about saying no, like the word no. It's more just about like educating them on why. Once you get your site surveys or your data, and you start going through these processes, and you just explain to them like, hey, like these are the reasons why we can't, and maybe if they do want to continue that direction, just kind of don't go down that road with them, because if just because money's there or something, you can end up in some big problems, if you're trying to do unpermitted work, or if you just do stuff anyways. It's like driving drunk. You can drive all you want until you get caught, and then it's like, oh crap, you know. So yes, it's okay to say no. However, that question was asked to me.
Yeah. And so to kind of tie into the no and also back to sort of AI, or I don't want to call it AI, like, there are these online design companies that I'm not going to name names or anything like that, but they sell this idea to a client and then they might not be local. And so they've never actually stepped foot on site. They've never done an actual site survey. They've never taken sight line pictures. They don't know what the challenges are beyond the fence line, whether that's noise or, like you said, a river or whatever it might be. They don't take grades. They just sort of make it look really pretty online and they sell this vision to a client. And then they start going down the rabbit hole with maybe some contractors and they realize that they've just been sold a lie, essentially. And so I've been brought in after the fact several times to correct and sort of unravel these ideas that these customers have been sold. And that's when no gets really hard, because I kind of say it's like trying to unsee something. You've been given this beautiful picture, but it's not buildable at all. For instance, I had a client one time who had a 19-foot grade change from the back of their house to the back of their property. And this online company gave them this gorgeous design for a pool and a pickleball court, never taking into account the slope, the
A
severeness of this.
19-foot
Yes.
slope.
Yes. And they only had I think it was 5 or 6 steps in the entire design. So it was a
Just not
massive,
buildable.
no. And so, it was just a really big challenge. And I find it a huge disservice to in the
Our
flesh
industry.
designers who are going on site and they're really, like you said, Jesse, taking into account all of the parameters, not just what you can see. I'm not quite as technologically advanced as you. Like when I do go onto site, I'm using a zip level at best, but I am
Hey.
very keen on, what's over the fence. What, is it a trampoline? Is it kids? Is it a dog barking? What are you trying to highlight? What are you trying to obscure? So, yeah.
Well, and yeah, I think there's a huge gap sometimes between, and that can be from site measurements or not fully understanding the site because they've never seen it in person, to then trying to construct something that's not, that there's a huge gulf in there sometimes. And I get that we have all this software to make beautiful pictures, but like you said, it undermines the people that are doing things well and in very, very high level of detail. I mean, to me, the detail is what evolves the design. If you have a 19-foot slope, just think of all the cool options you have on, retaining that. You can have 5 different plans and not even recognize.
Scratch the surface. Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you options, so why not use it? Right, use the drop as the
As the
inspiration.
inspiration. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So they've
Yeah,
also yeah.
it's challenging. And I am a big proponent of down with the big guy. Like, I
And
don't mean to be like the, down with Goliath, but, I just have a beef with that.
and that's where we, like Abby and me, in the future we're more than designers. We can call ourselves designers, but you end up advising the entire process. And that's why I've really liked to coin the term just being an advisor, just because I get brought in early on and I might end up all the
Okay.
way through being asked questions. I mean, like you mentioned, I'll call the names out. You get a yards end design and they tell you that, well, they told this homeowner it's $150,000 budget. I mean, they do some amazing designs. These designs will have plants from Hawaii down here in I mean, these things will they'll look amazing. Hey, and I've even tried to do the contractor, like you can become an affiliate for some of these things, and
Yeah.
the
Don't do it.
expectations get set so wrong, and what happens is clients get fatigued, and it just eventually it's just like, that's why my transparency is so important. It's just like, hey, these budget words, these conversations are important because it's like, look, you just mentioned outdoor kitchen, Bana pool, patio, that's already ringing the bell for 250, 300. Do you think that's even what you're thinking? Real quick. And it's just like, oh no, we have a $75,000 budget. Well, okay, that's great. I'm not going to turn down $1,000 design or whatever, but maybe that's lights, plants, little water feature with a little patio, maybe, right? And maybe some pathways, but it just gets a little gray when there's all these questions and all these answers that we're constantly, I'm sure Abby knows, like text after email after email after who knows and what and blah blah blah, and that's why I'm starting to charge for it. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great thing to kind of touch on is I have my design fee and I am a designer. And I have my aftercare fee during the
ooh,
install, which is my hourly consultation. And so I like to keep the two separate
Separate. Yeah.
because they really are two different animals. You're going to get the same level of service through both, but these are my babies that I'm sending to construction. And I would be remiss in just, I have my affiliate contractors with whom I work tons. So a lot of them do know how I love it to go in, but I want the customer to see that I'm there, that I'm seeing it through, and that again, I'm accessible. And then the other part of that flip side is that I'm actually making the contractor's job better as well because
Yeah.
the customer can see the relationship that I have with my contractor. We're joking, I affectionately call one of my contractors my work husband just because I talk to him, so many times throughout the week. But like the bottom line is the customer can see that trust and that instantly reduces that anxiety of spending so much money because they know they're in good hands. But I think it's really important, like you said, Jesse, to charge for your time. Like, for me to go out there, yes, it's free optically, but like it is in my design fee, whether they know it or not. And then, I'm there placing plants and, siting boulders and looking at samples with the client and making sure that it matches their stone and, whatever that might be. But I think, Jesse, you had touched on, you want to be a good liaison to your customer,
yep, yep,
Well, I think, there's so many, you guys have prepared all these questions and we're already, 40 minutes in. There's a lot to unpack here. And I think that I was thinking, well, how can we give some takeaways to the audience? Because I want to see everybody in our industry learn from each other and excel. And I think you only do that when it becomes a proper job. Everybody's paid their worth. They're paid to deliver great service. You guys both have contributed so much on how you do things. If you had advice to pass on to others doing design and build, any of the parts of a designer, whether it's design only or design and build, what advice would you give so that you've learned either the hard way or the easy way, or that maybe you set in stone at the beginning of your business that has helped you be successful?
And
Who
are
wants
you saying more towards what would you tell a client or what would you tell another designer?
another designer?
I'm going to let you answer that first, Jesse.
that was
I have to
loaded
think on that.
question.
I know.
That was
I mean, really just
sorry.
go, if you go back, it's like baking a cake. You go back through this 42 minutes of talking, and it's just really like dancing, like learn how to dance. Like you're going to save yourself tons of time with pre-qualification. You're going to save yourself tons of time with understanding why you get surveys, why you go out to sites, knowing back to what is a site visit, separating out different contracts for, okay, conceptual design phase, construction documentation phase. You have if you are a builder, you're going to go into those building costs. Don't get so job hungry and sales hungry that I always tell contractors all the time, I don't know how you're pricing without any goals and without any designs. It's like, they say, oh, well, we just do it, whatever. We just guess and whatever. So I'm just like design
In
first
our head.
in our head and just really, like we've been
Hmm.
talking about, is and enjoy what you're doing. if you're spending time on Facebook, make sure your algorithm is people like Abby, people like Angelique. Make sure you're following some of the best people that you can. Don't let all your social media time that we all put, I probably put 5, 6, I'm probably more, 6 hours a day on my phone. And at the time I am scrolling, I'm looking up people, or I'm watching people, or I'm micro learning all the time. Like, it's right now we live in the best time to, if you want to learn, man, you can become actually over
It's
learned.
out
You have
there.
to kind of calm down sometimes. But it really is not a gate kept secret anymore. It's there's ways that it works, or you can go try ways that other people have tried and it just doesn't. So I guess that really don't really answer much, but it would just, really the starting point back to how do you start these projects.
Well, I think what you're saying, Jesse, is surround yourself with people that are doing it well and are willing to share. And there are a lot of people in our industry that are doing it well and willing to share. So make sure that you're looking up the way and you're not, undercutting costs and your value, and you know, you're succeeding.
Cheap contractors have to start revaluing
Thank you for that.
the design process. You have to value design, because it don't matter if you're building a high rise or you're building a bridge, they all have design. So the backyard is just small enough that those $50 to $1,000 projects sometimes get started with just some really basic ideas, and it really can go south quick. So gotta value design no matter the size of the job, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would piggyback on that and say the same thing as him, as far as surround yourself with people, you are like the 5 people you spend the most time with, or whatever they say. And I think the other thing for me, this is my 10th year in business, which is huge. I went back to school as an adult and didn't have a clue what I wanted to do, and figured it out kind of as I was going. And I think one of the things that I find I'm very good at is asking for help. There
Mm.
have been so many times where I've had a really challenging design, and, I sometimes will have a little bit of imposter syndrome because, you're like, oh my God, this is a giant project and I've never done anything like this before, but I'll figure it out. But I rely on people for their guidance. Like, I have had a contractor come in and sit next to me and walk through the design with me before I ever even present, because God forbid I present something that's, on the level of a yard's end per se. I want to make sure that if I'm going to be putting this in front of a contractor and facilitating this introduction and relationship, it better be damn buildable. And so
Mm.
I am never above hearing criticism or learning. I think, if you can't get out of your own way, you're going to be short lived for this, and you're going to end up with either a lawsuit or, egg on your face. And, that's my biggest piece of advice, I think.
Yeah, that's good.
Gosh, this has been fantastic. I think we maybe need a few more sessions, huh? to
Yeah.
to talk about all the things that we had on the list. But I think it was great to have both of you on here, and love how different your methods are, how you do things, but also similar in a lot of ways. The main thing is, you guys are doing high quality work, and we want others to learn from you. So I really appreciate both of you being on here, and yeah,
Thank you.
thank you for joining us.
Appreciate your
Yeah.
time.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Nice
Thanks,
meeting you,
Abby.
Jesse.
Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Thanks,
Yep.
Jesse, and we'll see you all again soon.
Yep.
Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.